through this for nothing. Amen. I'm not going through this for nothing. They like the way I say that. My French comes out with that sentence, I think. 2 Corinthians, praise be to God, our Father, our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves have received from God. That's a mouthful. But when we go through something, who better for us to help somebody that goes through what we've been through? We truly understand. We know what they're feeling. You know, when somebody tells me now, like, they just got news that they just got that big C word pronounced over them, I know the feeling it was when the gynecologist told me that word, and it was no fun. I did not want to hear that word. That I told him I didn't have that. Like, I was determined. So when you go through something, you're going to be able to help somebody else. He comes alongside us when we go through hard times. And before you know it, he brings us alongside someone else who is going through hard times so that we can be there for that person, just as God was there for each and every one of us, and how he was there for me. Even though there's times that you don't feel he's there next to you, you think he's the farthest away, and you're crying, oh God, where are you? Why am I going through this? Sometimes you feel you're all alone. Nobody else goes through these hard times. And recently somebody shared with me I should be making a podcast. Is that what you call that? Podcast. And giving little segments to encourage pastors because of everything that I've gone through, and I'm there. Huh? What are you talking about? I need somebody to do this to me, not me to them, you know. But there are every day, the pastors are leaving the church because they're going through hard times and they have nowhere else to turn because they're all alone. Who do you go and share with? You know, like, who do you have that you can truly be 100% open with it? Because in my experience, every time I do, it always seems to come back and slap me in the face. So who do you go to when you go through hard times? So today it's a powerful message, and I hope you get it. Our God is one of compassion, and he comforts us when we go through trials. But it doesn't stop there. Our trouble gives us compassion to help others who are going through the same thing or other kinds of hard time. We may think that our circumstances make us unable to minister. That's a little bit what I just said. You know, when they told me what they said, and I thought, who am I? You know, we may think that, you know, we just can't do it. But God is on our side. He helps us. The scripture tells us that the very weight around our neck can become the launching pad for ministry to others. He uses all Christians who allows him to use their hurt to help other people. While sometimes we may not understand why we go through what we go through, God sees the whole picture and may be using us to help somebody else. And sometimes I want to say, Lord, stop using me, because I don't want to go through a heart anymore. I've carried enough I don't want to carry anymore. I'm at, you know, like you get to the point where, Lord, I just can't handle it. Stop it. You know? So, but he's always there and he gets us through it. So I don't understand why some of us, me included, it just seems that I have to go through so much. I want to help others with their struggles, give them hope. If God can keep me and use me through all these years, since 1978, you know, if he can keep me all through these years, he can keep you. Lord, I am not going through this for nothing. I want to stop for a second and just to let you know you're not alone in your struggles. And it's because I struggle alone. And it's no fun. I was raised in a home where it was embarrassed if the neighbors knew what went on in your home, and you didn't want people to know what you were going through. You know, like, so when I was having problems in my first marriage, I struggled alone. Nobody knew. And when I was having trouble with my kids, still am, nobody knew. They know some, but in the early years, they didn't know what I was going through. So I pray today that my testimony will give you hope, something that I could share that will minister to you. And I'm not saying that we have to be an open book and we just get up here Sunday morning and tell everybody our problem. That's not the point. There are things that we go through, each and every one of us, we need somebody to share with. Because if you don't share with, it's a lot harder. And believe me, I'm speaking from experience, it takes a lot longer to get over these hurdles. It takes a lot longer to conquer things when you're all alone. My God is so good. Who would have thought that on September 10th, 1978, when I asked the Lord to come into my life, I would still be serving him today. And especially since at the time, the husband I had, he was not serving the Lord. I didn't want people to think more differently about me. So I put on a face. How many people puts on a face? You're hurting. Your inside is crying. And you come to church. How are you? I'm fine. How many of us do that? We don't always want people to know what we're going through, especially as a pastor. It's not a good example to your congregation if you're going through a rough time and you're trying to tell the other people, be strong. Be strong. You gotta be strong, you know? You gotta conquer this. And inside, you're struggling. Pastor Tanya and Stefan shared a good word when they were here the last time. And pastors often need others to hold them up in prayer. They need to have them be strong next to them because you know what? I am not perfect. I say things sometimes when I'm hurting. I don't always have a tactful way of speaking sometimes. I could be, and you know what? I know this. I could be very direct. And I had to be that way because of my children and my first husband. And this is like something that I grew into. Because growing up, I was not like that. Growing up, I was shy little Ann, spoiled rotten. I got everything on a silver platter from all my aunts and uncles and my family. And now today, because of that, you know what? I'm not as close to my family as all the rest of them because I'm labeled as the spoiled little girl. And that is still following me today. I'm the spoiled little girl. And so in 2 Corinthians 6:14, the word tells us, do not be yoked together with unbelievers. We all know that scripture, right? For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? Is there someone who is just like you? Because you wouldn't want to marry somebody who's just like you. That would be the worst thing to do. Because if I was married to somebody like me, watch out. There'd be a lot of sparks flying, more than there is. What it means is don't go out and marry someone that you can't share your faith with. Here I was married to a man who, when we met, we were young teenagers, 15, and we'd go out and party and drink. And to me, it's like no big deal, because I did it, not as much. So I didn't see the signs. You know, we took a little bit of drugs, not me, of course, a little bit. So here, you know, I married a man, and it didn't take long that he was drinking a lot, more than a little. You don't take drugs. He ran around on me, and I knew it. And for days, he would leave on these drinking bins, and I wouldn't know where he was. And the only thing I knew what to do was to pray. I had 2 children, and 2 boys, and you know, I just couldn't leave. So he would leave, and I would get on my knees and pray. Lord, you know, I need to hear from him. I don't know where he is. And I'm telling you, when I got that desperate, the phone would ring, and it would be him on the other side just saying, I'm just calling to say I'm okay. And I'd say, okay, I know you're okay. And that was the end of the conversation. That's all I needed to know was he was okay. Because I didn't want to get a call to say that they found him, you know, killed in a car accident or lost somewheres or, you know. So anyway, we didn't have cell phones back then, or if they did, they weren't the little cell phones we use today, and not everybody had them, but I didn't have a cell phone. And so there was no communication when he was gone. So how many of us gets to that point where we're so desperate that we cry out to God? Do we really cry out to God when we get desperate to hear from God? That's what I did. You know, sometimes they say, you know, I want to go back to my first love. And there was times back then that I was so desperate as a new Christian, and I don't see that as much in me today, but I'm telling you, it was me and God, nobody else, because I didn't share this in church, what was going on. So on many such nights, by the time I was done praying, and sometimes even when I was still praying, the phone would ring, and it was him, letting me know he was okay. Some of you might think I was crazy to stay in a relationship like that. But you know, I never even thought in my mind to want to leave him. like I was raised, you make your bed, you lay in it, you stay in it, or whatever the saying goes. And it was better to stay in that kind of relationship for people to know what kind of relationship I was in. So some of you would think, yeah, she was crazy. And that's why sometimes when people are going through a hard time, we don't know what they're going through inside. Sometimes we think, man, if that was me, he would have taken the door a long time ago. But if you're in that situation, you might be saying different and maybe not everything that I say, like the way I did it. But you know what? Today's society, people are better educated. And today, me included, like if my daughter would tell me that if her husband did something, that some of the things that my first husband did, I would tell her, take the door. That would be my advice, because I lived through it, so now I know. Now I know. I would been better off living on my own. So in prayer for your husband, get desperate. God can change it. And I know it's like a cliche, but you know, God can change people. He's the only one who can do it anyway. And there's others after many years and still praying for their husband, and it seems nothing has changed, and their husband is still drinking, giving them a hard time, maybe not coming to church, whatever reason. Don't give up. My husband was very charming, good looking, and when he was sober, he was the best guy you would ever meet. Everybody loved him. My mother loved him, but she didn't live with him. You know, like they didn't see what I saw, because I wouldn't share with anybody what was going on. And so whenever they would say, you know, oh, you know, you're so lucky, you know, yeah, right, lucky, all right. But what about the times when he wasn't charming? Because there's always the two sides, right? There's times where he might have did things, but then there was the times he was so loving and you forgot all about the other pain. But I live with threats of him telling me that he was going to end his life and that he would take my life with him because he didn't want anybody else to have me. No, crazy. He never actually physically hit me, but a few times he punched the wall next to me because he was upset at me. And most of the time, it's because he probably wanted money to go drinking. And that's one thing I would never, and I never did, was give him money to go drinking. Like, I made sure the bills were paid, the kids were fed. Sometimes I had to call my mom, say, Mom, I need some food. And I did that. But I would not take money or the last dollars I had to give him money to go drinking. So then after that, he would feel guilty for punching the walls. One night, and this is a hilarious story now, and I shared this story before, but one night in the middle of the night, you know, coming home late in the middle of the night drunk, he comes home with this fur coat. You know, he's so excited about this fur coat that he found for me. He wanted me to get up and try this coat. Where did you get this coat? Well, he got it at the dump. That's where he got it. Because back then, you were allowed to go to the dump. And people would throw away good stuff at the dump. And because there was no Salvation Army, no second chance, you know, there was nothing. People just wanted to get rid of their stuff. They would just throw it at the dump, and and you know what? That's where he got his drinking money. He would go to the dump, find some good items, go sell them, and that's how he made his money. So, an obedient wife, I get up, I put on this coat on just to please him so that we wouldn't have a fight. So then I put the coat away and we went to bed. So even when he was out drinking, he thought about me. Imagine that. He was so considerate of me because he was so excited, and because I didn't want to argue with him or have him wake up the boys. I got out of my nice warm coat and put on that cold fur coat. And I don't even know whatever happened to that coat, because I'm sure I never wore it after that. So back then, a lot of people, like I said, would go to the dump, and that's where they made money. So he was very resourceful at finding ways to go out and drink. But it wasn't always a laughing matter. I always made sure my children were taken care of. And there was the nuns. I used to go to the nuns by the hospital. That's where I went. And we would go through these dumpsters. That's where I would go to try to find clothes for the boys. And then the spree, I think it was called the spree, opened up next to Big Deal. I was so excited because you go there and buy, like, it's almost like what's that place in Moncton?
Secondhand.
Yeah.
Frenchies.
Frenchies. Right, like Frenchies, exactly like Frenchies. And so I was all excited. And then until the kids at school would say to the boys, "Did your mom get that?" And then, of course, they didn't want to wear it anymore. Even back then, now the boys would go to Salvation Army and buy clothes. But on another occasion, he came home, he had been drinking, and he wanted money to go out drinking. He was furious. I would not give him anything. He got so upset, he was like out of control. Because I grabbed the phone. We were actually 4 sisters living, like I lived, there, Mark lived there, my sister Susan lived across the street, and Carol was younger at that time, even though she was still staying with my sister Mark, but we were, living there. And so I grabbed the phone, he was so upset, he grabbed the phone right out of the wall, and he was yelling. It was summertime, thank goodness, because our windows were open, and my brother-in-law across the street had to hear, because all of a sudden he comes outside yelling. But I don't know where he grabbed this axe, but he came at me with an axe. And he had me cornered in the kitchen, and I just swung the fridge door open, and the axe went in the fridge door. And my brother-in-law was outside, and started yelling, "John, come outside and fight like a man. Stop fighting with the women, stop fighting with the man." And, so there was like a commotion going on outside. And he was getting more frustrated. And then by that time, my brother-in-law's sow was out on the street. And so everybody's out on the street. And the boys were in the back sleeping. And so at one point, we lived in a trailer, so of course the 2 doors on the same side, and he goes out the first door where the kitchen was. I go down the hallway, and I opened the second door, and I'm standing at the door, and the moment that he went in, I went out. And I didn't want to go out before, because he would have saw me. So as soon as he goes back in, and I could hear him yelling, looking for me in the house. And the next thing I know, he's coming out of the house. He had went in the bedroom, woken up the kids, the boys, and he has Jeremy with a great big kitchen knife holding him with the knife in his hand, and he's saying, like, I'm leaving and you're not going to stop me and all that. And Jeremy was like his security to leave. And, so what are we going to do? So he's drunk, he gets into the car and he takes off, and I live down the Kinloch Road. And as soon as on Briar Lane, so as soon as he was leaving, the police was there and blocked the road, and he couldn't leave, and he surrendered peacefully, thank goodness. But that had left my son damaged. And he remembers that night. He remembered that night. So it's not always good to stay in an abusive situation. Like parents would say, you gotta stay in the situation for the sake of your children. It's not always good to do that. So I saw that he had gone back, and that's when I did my escape. But not at the expense of my son. So he spent the night in jail, and after that, I told him to leave, and he did. And all the time he was gone, guess what? I missed him. And always prayed for him. And then months later, he arrives, and at night, all apologizing, and, I've changed, so I believe him. And so he comes back into the picture, and 9 months later, Melissa's born. He's coming to church with me. I'm all excited. He's coming to church. He's playing hockey with the men in church. He's playing the guitar. He's writing songs. He's singing at home. And he's out witnessing to his family. I'm so excited. And he gets a job with a Christian brother, and something went wrong. And he was hurt by this Christian brother. And that's all it took. And he left the church. He went back into the world, back into drinking. And you know what? He would go out witnessing drunk. Because, what he had experienced was still in him. So sometimes we need to accept that the Lord's ways are higher than ours, right? In Isaiah, it says, avoid dwelling on the pain of your circumstances, but instead of dwelling on it, go to the ultimate source of strength, God himself. We must believe that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, Romans 8:28. The promise of that verse is that we will reap blessings from our losses. Through the Lord's mighty power, he uses trials to accomplish his plan to grow us from children into mature disciples of Jesus Christ. Are you facing something this morning in your life today? If so, the Lord wants you to develop your strength and character through it and draw you closer to him. And my prayer is that you will surrender to the Father even in the midst of the misfortunes. Trust that God is working everything in your life for good. John moved away to Ontario with his family, and one evening, there he was back in the picture, and this was the scenario. Until, make a long story short, he decided, his friend was going out west, they're going to work, so he's going out to Calgary, he's going to go to work. And I can't remember the details now why it took so long for them to get to Calgary. So he packs his bags And I'm encouraging him, yes, go to Calvary. He had gotten himself in trouble with the law. He had to do weekenders at the jail. And so he didn't go to jail that weekend. So me, I'm in the panic, oh my gosh, the police is going to come, they're going to get you. You didn't go to jail, like, yeah, maybe you should go to Calvary because they're going to come pick you up. But this is how I was, always in the panic. And so anyway, him and his friend, they decided to go, and he was much older. He was a contractor, and he was going to go start a business in Calgary. So John and him, they leave. They go to St. John. He stayed with my sister there for 2 weeks. And then he goes on his way, stopping in Ontario to see his mom, goes all the way to Calgary. He wasn't there very long. He gives me a call this Sunday afternoon. He gives me a call and he says, how are you? I said, not too good. My grandfather just passed away. I had just got the call that he had passed away. And he says, well, I just called to say I love you and I love the kids. And that was the end. I heard this sound and the line just went dead. Like the phone line was still open, but there was nobody on the other side. And then I kept hanging up, picking up. But, in my mind, I figured something happened. I didn't want to believe it. So a few hours passed, and the next thing I know, my sister next door, Mark, calls me and says, Anne, come over, the police are on their way. I knew he had took his life. And I'm so grateful in a way that he was out there and not here, because he always threatened that he would do it and take my life with him. So to me, it was a blessing from the Lord that it happened out there and I didn't have to deal with it. God protected me in that trial. So I had to live through that. I became a widow, 3 children. Melissa was 1 year old. And I didn't drive. I had to learn how to drive. They helped me get a car, got a car. And then, then after that, like, I met Doug and my life changed. But the kids, it affected the kids. Sometimes we stay in a relationship because of kids. For whatever reason, it didn't, when my oldest son moved to Calgary, of all places, he started calling me up, telling me that he was going to commit suicide, just like my first husband. So then I had to start dealing with this now, all over again. I had to deal with them on drugs and deal with them being messed up because of everything that happened to them. And sometimes, we just don't know, right? We just don't know why, things happen for whatever reason. Today, Chris is diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. It's embarrassing. It's hard. When I see him walking on the street and he's making all these noises. But you know what? I keep saying I'm not going through this for nothing. Because one day he's going to be healed. And one day he's going to help somebody through whatever it is he goes through. So anyway, all that to say, we go through hard times. All of us. It doesn't matter if it's a bad marriage, your children are messed up. It doesn't matter if you go through a battle with cancer the way I did. I don't know why I have to go through all these struggles. But this week, I am convinced more than ever that God wants to do something big and powerful and mighty like I have never seen before. Last Sunday night, I believe, for the very first time, I saw an angel sitting right here in this church, and if it wasn't an angel, I don't know who it was. But I saw a man sitting in church, and it was so real that I had the men of the church run outside looking for him because he was no longer there. I said, "Where did he go?" And they ran outside looking for this man. God, to me, is about to do something powerful. Like this morning, it was like the phone rings, Pastor Raymond. I have to bring Patricia to the hospital again. I was like, okay. He said, I'm going to try to make it through the service, but I'm on my way to the hospital. So I just hang up the phone from the dining room. I'm walking, and there's Doug on top of the stairs and says, Ann, I just can't go to church today. He's been sick with diarrhea for the last few days, and I think I poisoned him. Poisoned me. But anyway, he's not well. He says, I was in the shower and I could barely got out of the shower. And he says, I can't go to church, he says. And then the phone rang, it's Hannah. And, it was just like, okay, Lord, you're up to something. And we're contending for revival. And I'm sure that revival comes with a price. And if that's what it's going to take for me to go through struggles and go through all these things to get revival, well, then it's worth it, because I'm not going through this for nothing. Amen. Pastor Fred and Janet, when they came up here and they said, we really feel that you guys should be the pastors of the church. And they started training us, and they would come up and they'd say, how you doing? Because I would share with them what I was going through. And every time she walked through the door, she'd ask that question, I'd say, I'm not going through this for nothing. Because I did not want to focus on what I was going through. I knew what I was going through, but that's not what my focus was. So I want to encourage you this morning. It's not all tears and sad, and it's not all of that. I want to encourage you, because when we go through something, it's because there's something better coming. We have to believe that. We just have to believe that God has a bigger plan for each and every one of us. Now, some of you may never go through anything like I've gone through and still going through. And be careful how you judge a cover of a book. Yes. Because you don't know what I go through every day. And still am going through every day that you guys don't know about. And it's not an excuse. I don't want this to be an excuse, because I'm open, and I always say, come and talk to me if I say something, because sometimes I'm hurting. And when I say something, I'm saying things out of hurt. And I say things out of something I might have heard just before I came to church, or saw, or so anyway, we're all in the same boat, aren't we? We don't like to be judged, and we don't like to be put on a pedestal either. Because some people, they get put on pedestals. And we don't want that either. We just want to do what God wants us to do. Yes. And that's my message this morning, is that I know that something great is coming. And I want to encourage each and every one of you. And I say this all the time, I love each and every one of you. I love going on vacation, and you all know I like to go on vacation. And, but when I come home, I'm so glad to be back. I am so glad to walk in the church and see you guys when I come back. And a lot of times, I'll be honest with you right now, a lot of times, it's because I have to get away from my problems. That's why I like getting away. I remember somebody saying to me, you have a lot of money. You go on trips all the time. I said, no, I don't have a lot of money. It's just because trips is my priority. That's my priority. Some people may put their money in wherever. Everything I have goes towards my trips. That's my priority, to get away. Get away. When I put my house up for sale last year, one of the main reasons why I put up, not for me, not for Doug, for me to put up my house so I could move away and Chris would not know where I live. Now, do you know why my house didn't sell? Because I agreed to put up the house for sale for the wrong reason. But that's why I agreed to put the house up for sale, because I needed a break. Claude, you said you had a message on salvation, because I don't know where to go with this, so. But I know somebody can come to the Lord through this.
Can I share something first? And you really touched me this morning. You made yourself vulnerable to all of us, and I just so appreciate what you shared. You shared your heart. And I know that some of the things that you went through with your husband, I went through with your father. He was very violent with my mom. And he never touched us. We were 8 kids. But he would go after my mother's appliances with an axe. And I remember those days. It filled me with such fear. And I lived with that fear. And it's only God who can heal a broken heart and heal you of all the pain that you've gone through. But I can imagine what my mother went through. She lived for her children. She would never let us know how she felt, but she was always there. And thank you for who you are. I love you and I support you. And I thank God for this body of Christ. I think, as Anne said at the beginning, as pastors, we don't realize that our pastors go through human things too. We perhaps put them on a pedestal and say, oh God, they have it all put together and I don't. And we look to them for answers. But they look to us too. So this morning, before we leave, I really implore you to stand with Anne and with God this morning and pray with you, Anne, if that's okay. Because we want you to be there for us and we are there for you too. You're not alone, and not this time. So I just want to say that I love you and thank you for who you are. Thank you.
I remember when I was a security guard at the hospital. I remember going in for supper, if I remember correctly. And there was this young guy, we kind of had a great relationship, but at first he was kind of, he was in the world, very in the world, and he would say stuff that were just kind of like, oh my gosh. But I remember he was telling me about, his sister was born again. And he was saying that I don't know what's wrong with her. She's always hounding me, like, talking about salvation. So like, what am I saying? What? He just stood up and says, saved from what? And it just stopped me right there. And I thought to myself, like, oh my gosh, how do I get into this conversation? How do I relay salvation the way I feel as the Lord has put on my heart? I didn't say nothing, but it just bothered me that I just didn't open up my mouth. And I just pondered that question. And it's like, it's almost like right here, just like it was yesterday. That was probably like about 5 years ago. Salvation, for me, well, according, I shouldn't say for me because it's not based on my own strength or whatever I say, doesn't matter. It's what the Bible says about salvation. Salvation is being separated, is for God to redeem us from something that we are separated from. Saved from what? Well, saved from going to hell. I, Claude Roy, when I was a kid, my father used to, my real dad, he was, between him and my mom was 29 years of difference in age. And I remember going to the Kmart, and you used to be the circus there. I remember going to the rides, and we didn't have money, so I met myself from how am I going to get money? So I used to go. My father used to sleep in the living room because he had a stroke, and he couldn't go up the stairs and so on and so forth. So he would put his wallet in his pillow, and he would tie it with a rope. And he was kind of like an old, but it was very old style. Like, he's like, oh my gosh, they can't bring money to the bank and so on and so forth. But I used to be so good at just going right, like he was right there, his head was right there sleeping. I was so good opening up the rope, putting my hand like right under his head, pulling out the wallet and taking out $20, putting the zipper back on the thing and putting it back and tying it in. And I would take off, couldn't care less. Like it's like, oh, yes, I'm good. Take off, but never stop to think that what I was doing, I was actually stealing. I was actually stealing. If I would have died, I think I was 7 or 8 at the time. If I would have died, I would have never made it. I wouldn't be in heaven because I was a thief. I was separated from the love of God. I was separated. Not that God didn't love me, but I was separated because of the sin that I was committing. So salvation for me is complete surrender, complete turning around to Jesus Christ. Dying to self in a sense of saying like, okay, well, God, this is ridiculous here. I don't see you. I can't touch you. I can't smell you, but I trust. I, Claude Roy, have decided to trust in what I don't have a clue if it's true or not, but in myself, I decided to believe. And I have. Salvation for me is completely again surrendering to God. Salvation in the Bible, God, remember in Genesis, God says He created the whole world and so on and so forth. He created animals and plants and blah, 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 and everything. Created man, and then after that he stopped and he thought to himself, well, like it's not good for man to be alone. So he put man to sleep, took the rib, I think it's this side, made a woman. And then after that, Pastor Doug always had that little funny saying, whoa, man! But then after that, she took the forbidden fruit. But the clincher here is the devil is very wise. He uses the same tactic over and over again. Did really God say that? Did He say that? It's like sometimes today, like we stop and you think to yourself, oh my gosh, like we're praying for people. And it seems like nothing's going on. And the enemy comes and he says, really? Do you think he's listening to you? Do you think he's really speaking to you right now? And that's what the devil does. He puts seeds of doubt into our hearts, and he says, maybe that's salvation. It's been too long now. They say the Bible has been 2,000 years, almost in 2020. It's like, That really can be possible. Yes, it is. You know, like, yes, it is. Salvation is very possible today as it was when Jesus came and rise from the dead. So, to make a long story short, it, too late. If anybody has never really surrendered their heart to Jesus, and that was the opportune time. I've always had a hard time with, I remember people like pastors and so on saying, well, please close your eyes, and everybody will look around. I don't think that's the right thing to start off somebody in salvation, because if you do that, everybody gets you like, oh, embarrassed right off the bat. So, for me, I've always felt, like if you want to give your life to the Lord, keep your eyes around, because it's a party. The Bible says that if one person gives his life to the Lord, there's a party in heaven. A party like no party on earth. Salvation. You've given your life. You imagine you want to live forever and ever 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 with Jesus Christ, or in hell with the devil. It's up to you. So today, if you in your heart, if you like really, iffy, sketchy, whatsoever, now is the opportunity. If you want to stand up, come up front. It's up to you. If not, well, I presume that everybody has given their life to the Lord. So, Father, I just pray, Lord God, for what Anne was sharing this morning. I pray, Lord God, that we will be transparent. Not going around and telling all, like Anne was saying, being an open book. But, the stuff that, that we need to relate.